guys, welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to be reacting to
7 things Americans have more of than British people.
And the first thing that we're going to talk about is cars. And you might be thinking, Lawrence, that's not surprising. You always talk about how America has a really large car culture. And this is true, but I think that ignores the fact that when I lived in Britain, I was far more likely to experience a traffic jam. Why is that, Lawrence? Well, because we have way more people in a smaller area. And so even though there are fewer cars per person, there are still millions of cars. So that probably cemented in my head a false impression of just how many cars we have in England.
That's interesting because we saw somebody else were saying, oh, America has more traffic jams than Europe, which, once again, I feel, to be fair, what we've seen from his videos, somewhere like in Indiana, Illinois, I don't know exactly where, but kinda rural states, not exactly. Chicago is, so if he is in Chicago and Illinois, then I am wrong. But if he's like outside of Chicago in Illinois, the traffic is not really an issue there. Like the traffic in the States is an issue in like 10 key cities, maybe not 10, but like the major cities, like the LA's, the New York, Miami has a problem too, maybe Atlanta, Chicago, Seattle, like the biggest city of each state, maybe. So, traffic is alright, and like outside of those places, outside of the city, the traffic, it's not exactly a problem.
You know what gets scary is when you get to like a rural area and they don't have like a lot of lights, and it's like one road and you're the only car there. For me, I'm like comfortable with like moderate traffic, like there's other cars there, so you have like a witness or something. I don't know.
Compared to here. But there's no arguing with facts, even though some of you try.
In the US, about 91% of households own at least one car, while in the UK it's closer to 77%. Of course, Americans don't.
Still pretty high, 77, that's solid. 3 and 4 households own a car, okay.
Don't just stop at one car, they're often juggling 2, 3, maybe 4 vehicles per family, practically enough to start a car dealership. This partly explains why in the state of Montana, each resident averages nearly 2 cars. In Britain, if somebody owns 2 cars, they're either a millionaire or a car thief. In fact, the idea of parking more than one car outside of your average British home sounds like a logistical nightmare. So while Brits are debating whether to pay for an MOT...
like get around with their schedule, like do you share the car, or do some people just decide, okay, I have to take public transport?
Well, why do you think public transit is so prevalent in Europe? Because the cars are expensive.
I wonder how people decide, okay, you take public transport, I take the car.
Who in the family? Oh, I don't know. Well, maybe if they're sharing, maybe one of them drops the other and at work, and because I would think they can maybe go in the same direction. Yeah, kind of. Something like that, I would think,
Yeah, Americans are hopping into their pickup trucks, SUVs, and maybe even a spare sedan.
Perhaps one of the more surprising entries on this list is that Americans are more likely than British people to own a dog. Firstly, I can say that anecdotally as somebody who lived in Britain for a long time and didn't own my own dog, but did.
Just hit me, one of them is going to be guns.
After I moved to the United States. Therefore, that's proof. It's just not very good proof. But before we look at the facts again, I have more anecdotes. Because initially, after I moved to the US, I lived with my in-laws who had 240 dogs. It was 3 dogs. But I mean, 3 dogs feels like a lot, especially as somebody who raised a puppy last year. And yet it feels like it's not particularly uncommon in America. In Britain, as my wife said to me the other day, we seem to have a concern about leaving dogs alone when we go to work, which is fair enough, but I'm, a YouTube sensation and I work from home.
So his humor is funny. He is a funny guy.
We really need to work on your relatability.
That said, it is one thing to feel that Americans have more dogs than British people. Once again, here's voiceover Lawrence from the basement to give you the facts.
Statistically, around 40% of American households have at least one dog, which means that the other 60% have made a mistake. Compare this to the UK, where the percentage is thought to be between 30 and 36%. So why is there a disparity? Well, maybe it's because...
But that's not a significant 40% versus like 36%. That's kind of... I don't want to say negligible, it's more, but it's not like significantly more to a point where, put it in a video. I wouldn't mention, I don't know.
Because dogs require something that we as a nation of British people haven't quite figured out: enthusiasm. Either way, Americans don't just live with dogs, they treat them like royalty. Doggy daycare, pup cups.
Now, if we want to say Americans treat dogs like royalty, that is definitely true, the Americans, the
I
way they
wonder
treat their
in
dogs.
Europe if they don't like treat like them.
I
Like kids.
can't speak, for UK or the whole Europe, but
Yeah.
Lithuania dogs is more for like a security dog, more that's, not for like a best buddy.
Halloween costumes, and I was about to say that it all sounds a little bit much, but then I remembered Arthur has enjoyed all three of those things.
Dogs bring us joy, but there's one animal out there that insists on doing the opposite. Data brokers.
Data brokers are those entities that sell your personal information, be it your address or your phone.
Just Christmas dinner.
To combat this kind of thing in 2024, I've been using Sudoku.
What will help us?
I ain't gonna lie, that was a good intro for the in the way he intertwined the ad with the story. That was really good. But anyway, yeah, as I guessed, guns.
You're not going to believe this one. When I was doing research for this video, my face turned into thumbnail Lawrence because, and I hope you're sitting down for this, Americans are more likely to own a gun than British people. What? Which might sound like sarcasm, but one thing that often doesn't get spoken about when it comes to Britain is we do have guns.
It's true. Contrary to popular belief, not all guns are completely banned across the UK. They're just heavily regulated. In order to obtain a rifle or a shotgun, a civilian must obtain applicable licences and must have a valid reason for owning one. These reasons include sport shooting and hunting, but don't extend to firing off a few rounds at midnight on New Year's Eve. Yes, that sentence was aimed at Chainsaw Jim.
However, as is famously known, this pales in comparison to gun ownership in the United States.
In the US, it turns out there are more guns than people. For every 100 Americans, there are about 120 firearms, making it the highest such ratio in the world. For sake of comparison, 100 Brits will statistically have about 5, which is similar to the percentage of Brits that have been thrown out of a pub. Coincidence? I don't know.
So Brits often ask me, "Ooh, Lawrence, how many guns do you see every single day?" And the answer to that is next to zero, because unless you happen to be friends...
Yeah, you're not really seeing guns. Like, the only time you see guns is on the cops. That's about it. Aside from that. Now, in Arizona, though, I see motherfuckers walk with a gun. It's open carry, so... In open carry states, you will see people in Walmart or wherever they're walking, as it's open carry.
Do
Here,
you feel nervous?
it was awkward the first time, I guess. I don't know. I don't remember. It was a long time ago, but I feel like if you have the guts to openly carry, you're not gonna go do nothing with it because you have the licenses and everything, right? So
I would think nowadays, like since people are on edge, when you see someone like walking with a firearm visibly, it's like.
I mean, if you're walking with it in your hand, that's a different story. No, but if it's just like on your hip, I don't know.
With hunters, members of the police force...
No, a big
or
one like that,
gangs,
that's...
people aren't just wielding
You
them
want
on the
everyone to see
street.
the picture?
Yeah, if you're carrying a rifle, yeah, I don't know about that. Like, but I'm talking about like just a pistol, Yeah, if you're in public with a rifle, that is concerning.
Conceal them in their clothes. I don't have x-ray eyes, so I just assume that maybe they're there. There's a surprising lack of visibility around guns.
And you might say, Lawrence, that's because you live in Illinois where they have strict open carry laws. But the thing is, I also lived in Indiana where they don't, and it was the same story. I'm really just pointing this out so that my Aunt Mildred stops asking me if I'm alright.
Walking down the street, I think I've maybe seen one gun in 16 years wielded on the street, and it was a super soaker.
Strengthen damaged hair in one use with
No,
Redken.
I have seen people, as I said, openly carry because it's legal, but probably could count on my hand how many times. It's really not common.
Yes, a lot of American households, I would imagine, do own a Bible. And that's because I think Americans in general, if they are religious, are more likely to wear their religion on their sleeve than we are in Britain, where people, generally speaking, keep that to themselves. I think, as well, it's fair to say that Britain is a more secular culture. We've got a higher percentage of people there that I would say are non-believers, or non-practicing religious people. Whereas here, while America doesn't have churches that are 800 years old, it does have churches on about every corner trying to compete with Starbucks. And so Bibles, as well as crucifixes on walls, and maybe a Bible verse or two hanging on the same wall, is just something you see way more of here. Even people I've known who aren't particularly overtly religious have that stuff on their walls because it's just sort of culturally ingrained.
Here's a statistic for you. In the US, nearly 88% of households own at least one Bible. And not just that, the average household owns 4, about 1 for each car. Now, I couldn't find any reliable statistics for Britain, but I did find this. Only 6% of Brits actively practice Christianity or regularly read the Bible, whether it's a sign of devotion or, a cultural habit. The Bible is clearly a key player in American households, and as for Britain, let's just say the Bible's collecting dust next to that unopened copy of Pride and Prejudice.
Interesting. I never thought about that. That Americans have more Bibles than us, but that is true.
In hotels, they have Bibles in there in the drawers too. I don't know if they have that in Europe.
I'm not sure, but in here, every hotel room has a Bible in there. Yeah. Kind of discriminatory, if you ask me. Why not Quran?
It's like a tradition that was ongoing. I guess the start of hotels was by people who were like religious.
Gym memberships, and some of you might be watching this going, isn't America famously kind of overweight and out of shape? And while there are very much elements of that, it's also a country of extremes. We talked about this recently, to the extent that gym culture, just like car culture, just like any other embedded culture within American culture.
Yeah, I would say the gym, like in Lithuania, is definitely not as popular to go to the gym as here is. Like there's not many people go here. It's like almost everybody we know goes to the gym.
Is
I think
a
in
real
Lithuania you'll
thing.
be able to find like where they do it, like
What do you mean where they do it?
like
Where they do what?
where they focus, like everyone there goes they gym, like how people gym here. Because he said like there's extremes, so I feel like you find extremes
okay,
everywhere.
so it's not that there isn't people that go. I didn't not that. It's just more people, way more people. I think go here. Then it's just maybe because people. The food is bigger, and I don't know. The food is unhealthier, more calories. You need to kind of work off the weight. In Europe, maybe they walk enough to a point where they don't have to work out extra at the gym. Maybe that. I don't know why exactly, but it is way more common here. I agree with that.
You could be driving through Chicago, just down the street, and you look to your right and see people working out through a window.
And I would say the amount of gyms here is way more as well. Not just, but there's so many gyms. If they are there, then people use them because it's not cheap.
Not uncommon. For me, growing up in Britain, I think the last time I went to a gym was at school. Actually, I think that's still the case. I don't know why that is. I think we're a nation of joggers, so we like to work out that way. And cycling. I think our country has the infrastructure for outdoor exercise, more perhaps than the United States does. Where also, I think you're less likely to find a sort of public swimming bath. Like, they do exist here, but in Britain they're far more common, although the one that I grew up with in my hometown closed down. So I don't know how true that still is. I think it's just we have different ways of staying in shape.
Statistically, around 24% of Americans claim to have a gym membership, which sounds impressive until you realise that most of us think that leg day is walking to and from the basement, and cardio means...
Let's also differentiate that the fact that you have a gym membership doesn't mean you go. Some people, they get it at the New Year's. They get it for the whole year to hold themselves accountable because, if I spend money, I'm going to go. They go for a month or two and they stop and the membership's still there, So just because you have it doesn't mean you go.
Down to tie your shoelace. Meanwhile, the British approach fitness with a little more subtlety. About 14% of Brits are signed up for a gym, but it's not because they're less active. After all, lugging around 4 shopping bags of Tesco meal deals has its own charm. Why sweat in lycra when you've got the great outdoors and a pot noodle as your workout incentive?
And yes, something that you might wear at a gymnasium, Sweatpants. I remember having a pair of sweatpants when I was a child. I don't remember owning a single pair since then. In Britain, it could be that we're less likely to embrace casual fashion, although I do remember shell suits. Here, sweatpants aren't just the fashion choice of the gymnasium.
So what about
goers.
at home?
See people walking down this street in them, or going to the shops, or sitting in a restaurant. And frankly, they just look a little bit silly. Although I've just remembered I was wearing a raccoon suit earlier. So what do you think, voiceover Lawrence? Are your observations of sweatpants accurate?
Americans are nearly twice as likely to own a pair of sweatpants compared to their British counterparts. Twice! And that's not just some stat I've made up. That's a stat that ChatGPT just made up. But it sounds right. Meanwhile, across the pond, Britons seem to reserve their sweatpants for painting the house. It's less Netflix and chill and more DIY and thrill. But maybe it comes...
If you wear jeans hold you more accountable of what you're eating, so you are more aware of what you look like if you're gaining weight or if you're losing weight.
Oh, because of the way it's done?
Because it's structured. But when you wear sweatpants, you're more likely to be more free with your weight because sweatpants are more forgiving in terms of weight.
I don't wear sweatpants because it's too hot. But if we live somewhere colder, I would wear sweatpants.
But I would think sweatpants, gym clothes would be like interchangeable. The same thing.
Maybe, yeah, could be.
Down to the weather. I mean, Americans enjoy a cozy...
But no, I think not sweatpants, maybe gym wear overall. I would think that would be a valid point. I think Europeans, as he said, a little more fashion conscious than here. Be more like comfort conscious than fashion.
Camp year round thanks to air-conditioned bliss, whereas Brits don't do that. So is this a love story between Americans and their joggers, or just a cultural misunderstanding about what's truly formal wear for a Target run? Either way, the numbers don't lie, even made-up ones. Sweatpants are basically America's second uniform.
Not to finish talking about toilets, but we're going to finish talking about toilets.
Yeah, here it's like basically a toilet per bedroom. Like that's kind of how it goes. Each bedroom has its own toilet. It's a little weird, but okay.
Because in the vast majority of the more than 10 American addresses that I've lived at, there's been a second toilet. Am I complaining? No, because then you get one to yourself when you live with only one other person. Mine's the basement one. But in Britain, a second toilet within a house, I think would be considered a luxury. And maybe that's down to the fact that our houses are smaller or that we don't have White Castle. But I think every address that I lived at in Britain had just the one, which it's really bad when it gets blocked and you live with 5 people.
According to a recent survey, 65% of US homes have 2 bathrooms, compared to just 27% in the UK. Now, that's not just convenience, it's a logistical dream. Imagine never having to queue up at 7 a.m, dodging flatmates in fluffy robes while clutching a toothbrush like a weapon of war. So why is there a disparity? Well, it boils down to that thing again, space. The average American home is over twice the size of the average British one, meaning there's plenty of room to fit that extra throne. Although in Britain, we do have actual thrones.
Anyway, that's it. I'm sure there are plenty.
Interesting. Yeah, no, I feel like everything you said is correct. The dog one is I don't know if it was worth a mention. I think it's statistically insignificant, but
They do the math where, based on square footage, it determines how many toilets are required in that house.
oh, that's the law.
I believe so. Because, for example, there's like mansions that have like 10 bedrooms and then
12
14
bathrooms. I can shit all day. Yeah.
Ugh. Guys, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Join the Discord. And as always, share as much kindness as possible.